I went back to my hometown last October for a long weekend. It had been years since I'd been there. My parents moved away after I left for college, so I didn't visit much anymore. But my best friend Dylan never left. He still lived in the same small house near the coast, just a few blocks from the beach. We hadn't seen each other in years, so when I arrived, we spent the day catching up. We talked about old memories, places we used to hang out, trouble we used to get into, and the dumb things we did as teenagers. As the sun went down, Dylan brought up the old pier. "Remember the pier?" he asked. Of course I remembered. We used to ride our bikes there all the time. It was a long wooden pier that stretched far out over the water. When we were kids, it felt like it went on forever. But years ago, the town closed it down. They said it was unsafe. The boards were rotting, some railings had fallen away, and during storms, parts of it would shake like it was ready to fall apart. Nobody was supposed to go there anymore, but people still did. Teenagers, fishermen, and sometimes people just looking for a quiet place to sit. "Let's go check it out tonight," Dylan said with a grin. I hesitated. "Isn't it dangerous?" He shrugged. "It's fine if you're careful. I went last month. The view is amazing at night. Trust me, it's worth it." I don't know why, but something about the idea made me uneasy. Maybe it was just remembering how creepy that place felt when the waves got rough. But I agreed anyway. It was already late when we set out, around 11:30. We each grabbed a flashlight from Dylan's house. The night was cold enough that we wore jackets. The streets were empty as we walked toward the beach, the sound of our footsteps echoing off the quiet houses. The only other sound was the distant crash of waves. When we reached the sand, I saw the pier in the distance. It looked even more broken down than I remembered, tilted slightly to one side, with parts of the railing missing. In the moonlight, it almost looked like something out of a dream. We climbed the short steps onto the pier, the old wood groaning under our weight. The air smelled strongly of salt and seaweed. We could see our breath in the cold air. The further we walked, the more the boards creaked, and every now and then, one of us would step on a spot that felt soft underfoot, like the wood could give way. We were maybe a third of the way across when Dylan stopped suddenly. "What?" I whispered. He pointed toward the end of the pier. "Do you see that?" At first, I didn't. I thought maybe it was just a post or a shadow. But then I saw it, a figure standing at the very end of the pier, facing the water. It didn't move at all. The wind was blowing hard, but the figure didn't sway or shift. It was as if it were frozen. I felt my stomach tighten. "Probably just some guy fishing," I said, trying to sound calm. Dylan shook his head. "No fishing gear." We kept walking slowly, our flashlights aimed at the boards in front of us. I didn't want to shine the light directly at the figure. I just wanted to get close enough to see, without making it obvious. The boards creaked louder as we approached. When we were about halfway down, the figure's head turned. Not the whole body, just the head. Slowly, and far more than seemed natural. It turned until the face was pointed straight at us. Even in the dim light, I could see it was pale. Too pale. The skin almost seemed to reflect the moonlight. The eyes looked wide, but the details were hard to see from that distance. Then, just as slowly, the head turned back toward the ocean. I felt a wave of unease wash over me. Dylan whispered, "Let's just leave." Before I could answer, the figure took a step forward, then another, and then it simply stepped off the end of the pier into the black water. There was no splash, no sound at all. We froze. My heart was pounding, but my feet wouldn't move. After a moment, Dylan whispered, "Where did they go?" We ran to the end of the pier and shone our flashlights down into the water. Nothing, just the restless, churning black waves. And then I noticed something. Wet footprints on the wooden boards. They started right at the edge, where the figure had been standing, and went toward us. The footprints were large and bare, dark and glistening in the moonlight, but they stopped halfway down the pier. No prints led back toward the end, and no one was there. We stood in silence for what felt like a full minute before Dylan whispered, "We need to go." We didn't walk. We ran. The boards rattled under our feet, the wind howling in our ears. We didn't stop until we reached the sand. We didn't say a word the whole walk back to his house. That night, I had trouble sleeping. I kept thinking I could hear water dripping somewhere in the room. Around 3 a.m., I woke up suddenly, feeling cold. The sound of dripping was louder now. I sat up and froze. On the floor, leading from the corner of the room to the side of my bed, were wet footprints. Large, bare footprints. The wood was soaked, but there was no trail leading in or out. I didn't sleep for the rest of the night. The next morning, the footprints were gone. I left town early that day. I haven't been back since. I grew up spending every summer at my uncle's cabin by a quiet lake in the countryside. The cabin was old, but cozy, with a wooden dock that stretched into the dark, green water. It was the kind of place where you could sit outside at night and only hear crickets, frogs, and the occasional splash of a fish. My best friend, Chris, had been coming with me since we were kids. We knew the lake well, every cove, every shallow spot, and even the hidden island in the middle. When we were younger, that island had always seemed like a fun place for exploring during the day, but at night, it looked different. The trees seemed taller, the shadows darker, and it always felt like something was watching from between the branches. One summer night, when I was 20, Chris and I decided to take my uncle's old motorboat out after dinner. The moon was full and bright, and the water was calm. It was the kind of night that felt safe, until it didn't. We packed a small cooler with drinks, grabbed an old lantern, and pushed off from the dock. We motored slowly across the lake, just enjoying the cool air and the sound of the water lapping against the hull. Eventually, we tied the boat to a half-submerged rock near the island. From there, the shoreline was just a few yards away. It was quiet. No wind, no birds, just the steady hum of the insects. We sat for a while, talking and laughing. Chris was telling a story when he suddenly stopped mid-sentence. His eyes were locked on something behind me. I turned around, expecting maybe a deer or raccoon on the island. Instead, I saw a person standing right at the water's edge. They were far enough away that I couldn't make out their face, but I could see their shape in the moonlight. I thought it was weird, but not scary. Maybe a fisherman or a camper. I waved, but they didn't move. They just stood there, perfectly still, staring at us. I turned back to Chris and shrugged, trying to laugh it off. But Chris didn't laugh. His voice was low when he said, "They've been standing there for a while. I thought they'd leave, but they haven't moved." I looked back at the shore again, and my stomach tightened. There were two people now. Both of them just stood in the same way, facing us, not saying a word. Something about it didn't feel right. The air suddenly felt colder. I told Chris maybe they were just curious, but even as I said it, I knew I didn't believe it. Then came the sound, a small, deliberate splash, like someone stepping into the water. We both froze. I stared at the surface, and sure enough, there were ripples moving toward us. Chris jumped up. "Start the engine," he said. His voice was tense now. I hesitated, feeling ridiculous for being scared of a couple of strangers, but then came another splash. This time, closer. I fumbled with the keys, my hands shaking. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw a pale hand rise from the water and grip the side of the boat. My heart slammed against my ribs. Chris grabbed an oar and raised it over his head. "Go!" he shouted. The engine sputtered, coughed, then finally roared to life. I shoved the throttle forward. The boat lurched, water spraying out from behind us. I didn't look back until we were halfway across the lake. When I finally turned, I wished I hadn't. There was a small rowboat behind us, and it was moving fast, way too fast for just rowing. Two figures sat inside, their faces hidden in shadow, but I could see their heads turned toward us with every movement we made. I pushed the engine as hard as it would go, but the motorboat was old, and no matter how fast we went, the rowboat kept gaining. The steady splash of their oars against the water echoed across the lake, and each sound made my skin crawl. Chris kept looking over his shoulder, his breathing quick and sharp. "Who are they?" he said. "Why are they following us?" I didn't answer. I just kept steering toward the cabin dock. After what felt like forever, the dock came into view. The rowboat was maybe 30 feet behind us now. I could see more of them. Wet clothes clinging to their bodies, their hands gripping the oars hard. Still no voices. Then, right before we reached the dock, the rowboat suddenly stopped. It just sat there, rocking gently on the water, as if they knew we were watching them. We tied the motorboat quickly and ran inside the cabin, locking every door and window. We didn't turn on the lights. We just sat in the dark, listening to the night. Around midnight, we heard it, the soft thud of something bumping against the dock. Over and over, slow and steady. We stayed up until morning, but we didn't see the rowboat again. We never took the boat out at night after that, and we never found out who they were or why they were out there on the lake, watching us.